Thanks so much, David, and good morning, everyone. My name again is Dan Carroll, and I'm excited to moderate our session this morning on deployment and innovation. At the Milken Institute, we have something called the 10,000 Communities Initiative, where we currently work with over 1,400 capital providers and communities to drive deal flows. So I love this panel. These are my people. Little quick scene setting for the discussion. Pick an estimate you want, but we have essentially a $27 trillion gap in the U.S. between now and 2050 to build community and climate resilient infrastructure for local economic development. Federal funding alone was never going to get us there. 2/3 of infrastructure funding in the U.S. is funded locally through muni bonds and other means. What is going to get us there and close the gap are new techniques to blend capital and catalytic capacity, which we'll talk about today, and the doers and innovations on this panel who are working across the U.S. So let's get going. Amy Mattias, I don't need to tell you that resilience isn't just about nature, but food and nature and more. Tell us about your work at Future Funds to build your local economy.
Yeah, thank you so much. Hello, everyone. My name's Amy Mattias. I'm the Executive Director of Future Roots, formerly the Sun Valley Institute for Resilience, founded by Amy Christensen 10 years ago. We're a place-based nonprofit here, and our mission is to transform the food system of Southern Idaho, and we do that by connecting people to local food, supporting regional producers, and fostering resilient communities. Our work is transformative by deploying capital to food businesses, ranchers, and farmers. We are also focused in on inspiring learning, bridging communities to connect people with the resources and the tools they need. We're also modeling impact to bring that to other communities throughout the area. Today, I'm really going to focus on our impact fund, which is a revolving loan fund focused in on food economy here in Southern Idaho. We launched the fund in 2021, and to date, we've deployed $407,000 of zero and low interest loans to 6 businesses throughout Southern Idaho. If you come to the workshop later this morning, you'll hear more about our fund in particular and all those nitty-gritty details of how much we've loaned, who we've loaned to, et cetera. But I'm keeping it a little bit high level today on the panel. So we take philanthropic capital because people in our community believe in localizing our food system. They believe in regenerating resources, and they believe in the viability of small businesses. So we're able to use philanthropic dollars, and as well as leveraging wraparound services that our other programmatic activities offer. So we act as value chain coordinators, which means that we are a broker, a relational broker between producers and buyers. We help make introductions. We help our borrowers and potential borrowers tap into new markets. We also do a lot of education with individual consumers and businesses. So we teach them where they can get the food, how to cook the food, and why it's really important for that food to end up onto their plates. We also identified a gap recently, and my program coordinator is here in the audience somewhere, Hannah. We've been working really hard on launching a regional food system hard infrastructure asset map. It's a really long name, but it's pretty simple of what it does. It's a layer of data that we've collected from surveying over 600 businesses in Southern Idaho, and we're assessing the cold storage facilities, processing, transportation and distribution, commercial kitchens and retail access points, as well as food waste recovery, to see what types of services are offered and available to businesses, and also to help us identify those gaps so we can deploy capital to solve those gaps in the future.
Wow, that's amazing. Do we have community cloning technology? Because we need to clone you and your team and get around the country. Emma Miller, going to you next down here on the couch. You're with the National Renewable Energy Lab, where cool whiz-bang technology has been invented for decades. But as we know, a lot of the technology we already have hasn't been deployed at the scale that we want. Share with us about the work on the Community Power Accelerator.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Hi, everyone. Emma Miller. I work on the Community Power Accelerator, or the CPA. And this is a fully funded project by the Department of Energy. So it's completely free to sign up and free to use. And basically, at its core the goal is trying to just help facilitate and get more community-led, community serving, and low-income serving distributed solar projects off the ground, and do so by helping to connect capital providers with the solar developers wanting to build those projects. So at its core, the CPA is an online matchmaking platform. We often call it a dating app because it's kind of like the two are trying to, come up with matches together. But we're really trying to diversify who the players are in this space and ensure that everyone feels like they can be a part of it. It's not just the big traditional players you see in the distributed solar space. And so when we talk about capital providers, we have national philanthropies and national banks, but a lot of my work is actually getting smaller community level financial institutions. So community development financial institutions, CDFIs, we have native CDFIs, native lenders, we have credit unions. So kind of a whole plethora of loan size or capital size that people can provide, and a whole kind of mix of experience of how nascent a lender is or how experienced they are in the space. And then on the solar development side, we have your traditional solar developers, but then we also have nonprofits and CBOs who want to bring solar into their community, and they're often partnering with an EPC to make this possible. And in order to really facilitate that, we have capacity building resources and educational resources like free technical assistance. We also partner with University of New Hampshire and have free courses that are led by industry experts. So courses on solar development, and we're expanding those offerings as well. And then we also have some other resources that are helping the developers really be able to market themselves to the capital providers. So at its core, it's an open, kind of hands-off, which is sometimes unique for the government, but marketplace where users join, and it's really just trying to facilitate a trusted space for connection and collaboration at the more local level. And we're going strong we have 260 megawatts of solar on the platform. We have 110 capital providers and 240 developers, a good mix of those being nonprofits and CBOs.
Awesome, thanks. So we've had a local acceleration organization building their local economy, a national platform, helping under-resourced communities build projects. I want to go now to Kaitlin, who represents Open Future Coalition, which is looking to cross-link community bottom-up activity across a whole bunch of geographies and countries.
Thanks, Dan. So Open Future Coalition was founded under the premise that at a time when we have a lot of conversation around how we need to innovate and solve these complex global challenges that we're all facing, that many of the solutions are already here, that they've often been here for decades, if not for thousands of years, and that they're often grassroots led. And so we're committed to developing social, tech, and financial tools and making them accessible to grassroots community leaders, organizations, and networks globally. And we've made our tools available over the last 4.5 years in over 70 countries. From a tech perspective, we launched a platform called Open Impact, and that's really committed to supporting these leaders in solving complex coordinative challenges on the ground, everything from landscape scale ecological restoration to disaster relief to helping to connect small farmers with one another, with technical assistance, and with buyers. We do that through the delivery of customized workflows that support on-the-ground coordination. We support monitoring, documentation, reporting, and ultimately support these solutions in making themselves more visible to their peers and to multi-capital resourcing. From a social perspective, we do a lot of sectoral and cross-sectoral convening across the areas of ecological restoration, food systems, community wellness, and built environment. And we're just now wrapping the inaugural year of our Regional Resilience Fellowship Program, where we had 21 fellows across 16 countries and 35 regional projects that participated in peer-to-peer learning and gained access to our tools, which I'll speak a bit more on in a bit here. And then from a funding perspective, we started out really doing sort of multi-capital convening because we realized that we needed to be creative and flexible in solving some of the emergent gaps across these different geographies and sectors we were working in. And after the first couple of years of doing that, we realized our philanthropic work was really starting to fill a pre-development gap for a lot of these philanthropically funded efforts that were ready to access other forms of investment, but that the most readily available forms of investment for those projects often weren't quite a fit from a governance or other perspectives. And so that led to the more recent launch of a funding practice called Open Future Fund, where we continue some of that syndication and convening work, but are also looking at how we can catalyze both direct investments into some of these local and regional funders that already hold strong expertise in how to structure resourcing within these communities, but also to continue to offer shared services across these communities from a funding perspective.
Boom. Thank you so much. Over, Emily, you're so far away. So to close out this round, kind of the what is the what, wanted to turn to Emily, who is somebody who has been in the community finance field for a while. And so we're going to have her explain none of these deals come together without blending dollars, understanding differences between debt and equity, investors. And so she's going to share what she's doing at Amalgamated in 3.1 minutes.
Easy, Dan, no problem. Hi, everyone. Emily Robichaux, really pleased to be here. I think what's really exciting about everything that we've been talking about today is the opportunity that's out there for these community projects. And the question is, how do you bring capital to them? Capital being the oxygen that can help these initiatives and projects grow. When I first started working in finance about 10 years ago, I was really surprised at there's a lot of variety out there. There's a number of different financiers. They have different risk appetites. They're interested in different types of projects. Some are providing debt. Some are providing equity. Debt is not going to dilute the ownership of a particular project or initiative, but the financier is going to be looking for, how is it that we know that we're going to be paid back? Equity can take a little more risk, but it does, dilute some of the ownership. So there's some choices there that community projects and CBOs have to make when they're thinking about how to finance these projects. And across this ecosystem, it's what Emma had mentioned. There's a real matchmaking work that has to go through, right? How is it that you can match what you're offering with what the financier is interested in financing? And how do we know that there's a good fit there? And I wanted to lift up a little bit of what Emma was saying. Within this ecosystem, there's community-based financiers they really act as the capillaries of the financial ecosystem, bringing capital out to rural areas, reaching borrowers that are often overlooked by more traditional financiers. They can work at smaller check sizes, so really can drive economic development out into communities and supporting these projects. My role at Amalgamated is to work with these community lenders to figure out how to blend capital to support these projects. I have a couple examples to share, but it's a really exciting time to think about how do we partner to lend and support these community initiatives that are really going to be transformative for our communities.
Amazing. Speaking of examples, I want to go back to you and then come down the other way. We're an on-time and on-budget group, the local doer community that we represent. So we're going to do one round of, this work is hard. What's the success story or an example that you're proud of that you think can scale? We'll do that round, and that'll be 1.2 minutes each. And then we're going to talk a little bit next about how we're all pivoting in this moment of disruption around federal funding and the need to really drive this local conversation. So you can go first.
Great. So I'll actually share an example that is in progress. We actually, Amalgamated had a little while ago reviewed a transaction in rural Maryland for a farm that was looking to do agrivoltaics. So that's, kind of agriculture and native plant life around the solar installation, regenerative agriculture, carbon removal, and composting. So when you think about a project that is all in for nature, this is it. Top tier on impact. However, it didn't meet our credit standards. And so we had to say no. However, it has recently come back because we are actively looking in conversations with a community lender in the state that can come in a credit enhancing fashion on this transaction. And now all of a sudden, this transaction is something that has legs again. So really, again, watch this space. We don't have anything to announce yet. It's actually the deal that is being led by a colleague of mine, where this is her area of expertise. But I'm really hopeful that we'll be able to have something really good to announce in the next few months. And it's really a testament to blending and partnering together to get transactions done.
Well, and also I think what we need to value more is Lego style, high demand, highly replicable projects like we can hit over and over again. Kaitlin?
Sure, yeah. So through the Regional Resilience Fellowship Program, we've seen both the power of peer learning as well as deeper applied practice on the ground. And so within the fellowship program, more than half of our fellows are Indigenous-led organizations at a global scale, so ranging from bamboo and vetiver cultivation in Borneo to agroecology efforts spanning the Andes and Amazon, from peer learning programs led by Maori community leaders in New Zealand to traditional leaders in West Africa working on reforestation. And we've seen both incredible exchange of traditional ecological knowledge and practice between these programs, as well as shared learning around how to face emergent challenges. So there are folks in, for example, the Amazon who've been dealing from a policy perspective with land defense for a really long time, who are now able to start to share practices with folks in West Africa who are now dealing with mineral rights, maybe for the first time, and are able to borrow some learnings there. And as well, we've been able to deepen through specific place-based use cases, one example being the largest historically Black college in the US, North Carolina A&T State University. There's a 50% gap in access to public funds for Black and tribal land grant institutions in the US. We've been able to address that both by leveraging our tech tools to provide technical assistance to 4,400 small farmers across North Carolina, but as well we were able to make that tech contribution in kind, which meant we were able to pull in state and federal matching funds to continue that programming and help continue to close that gap in resourcing.
Awesome. You know, I think you're going to talk about a project, and it's making me want to do my Elmo imitation, but I'm not going to do that. But share your story.
Cool. Yeah, thank you. So I think my favorite part, or one of my favorite parts about the CPA is, and especially I used to work in the solar development space before joining NREL, is just, you know, when you bring things more bottom up, when you have community members leading these projects, you see just much more creative, non-traditional solutions that can break through traditional like barriers or challenges that you might see in the solar development space, like policy or regulatory barriers. So like a quick example before Elmo is in North Carolina, not traditionally solar friendly state where there's no community solar program. A church put solar on their rooftop and they used the savings to create a fund that did direct electricity bill pay for low-income residents of that community. And, you know, something that a company like mine...
This is Lake Elmo.
No, not yet.
Oh, okay.
This is just another... but a company like my old company would, never have thought to do that. And that's really cool. But Lake Elmo, so our great partners at the Kresge Foundation just released a case study on the Community Power Accelerator. And they highlight Cooperative Energy Futures, a group out of Minnesota, their project, the Lake Elmo Solar Garden. And this is a 1.2 megawatt community solar project, so it's all subscription based. And it's serving over 200 low-income households, most of which are residents of a manufactured home park. So as you can imagine, CEF had a little bit of trouble kind of selling this to more traditional financial providers. It can be deemed risky. There aren't great model projects to point to. So it wasn't until they joined the CPA that they were able to really open kind of their opportunities for partnership and found a lot of mission-aligned groups to work with, and actually ended up getting a $2.3 million loan from a group out of California, which allowed the project to come to fruition. So I think just highlighting the CPAs, it's just giving voice to the communities already doing the cool work and expanding what solar development means. And it's also expanding unique opportunities for partnership.
Thanks. Amy?
Yeah, so my story that I'm going to share is one of our borrowers. And I met him when I first moved to Idaho in 2014. He was working at the farmer's market. He's a third generation Idaho farmer and rancher. You can actually go meet him behind the limelight. The farmer's market is today. It opens at noon. You can go talk to him. And he and I became friends, and we shared our vision and our values and our goals. And he said to me, I really want to have a cow. And if you don't know this, there's a lot of cows in Idaho. And most of these cows live in concentrated animal feeding operations. They produce a lot of manure. That manure makes its way into waterways, and it provides a lot of nutrients that cause algal blooms and a host of other issues. But he wanted to do it differently. He wanted a pet cow that was grazing out in the pasture that he could milk 1 or 2 times a day and drink delicious milk and maybe make some cheese and yogurt for his family. And I said, what would this look like if it was actually a viable commercial operation? And we started penciling some numbers, looking at some grazing ideas, looking at regulations and requirements from the health department. And we developed a business plan. And in 2022, after we deployed some capital to him for startup costs, he sold the first bottle, the glass bottle of milk. He can't keep up with demand 3 years later. And his goal is not to scale. His goal is to have a relationship with every cow on his land. It's to use those cows to regenerate the pasture. It's to recycle the gray water. It's to turn all that manure into compost. He also wants to have all of the calves be raised by their mamas out in the pasture and graze with their herds, which is extremely different than the current dairy operations that we see across the nation. He wanted to prove that dairy is a financially viable, that it is environmentally restorative, and that you can do it in a philosophy that's aligned with the relationship and kinship that he believes in.
Awesome. All right, team bottom up. We're doing well on time. Folks that have been working at the community level have known for years that federal dollars is not the only thing. It's nice if you can get it. Obviously, there's been a massive zigzag between a lot of federal dollars flowing, now disruption, some money's coming in, money's not coming in. So wanted to open it up to 1-minute answers about how your organization or partners are pivoting in this moment, given the uncertainty going on. Anyone want to grab this one?
Sure, I can jump in. I submitted a USDA reimbursement yesterday. We think we're going to get it. Fingers crossed, it's our first one in this administration. I'm also on the key partner team of the Northwest Rocky Mountain Regional Food Business Center. This is another USDA program. There's a regional food business center that touches every community across the nation, and it has been under review since January, and we have no idea what's happening. We keep doing the work because the universities are guaranteeing funding until they get that termination letter, but it's not been so lucky in other areas. The local food purchasing program has been shuttered across the nation. There's been not a single dollar available for farm to school food programs, but we are hopeful that we know there's advocates in this administration that are pushing for these programs to be funded going forward. We hope to see the IRA and the Climate Smart Commodities program that are really driving regenerative adoption across the nation come back online, but we don't know yet, and it's hard to not know.
I'll throw in, while folks are thinking about this, one of the things that we've been doing for the last 6 years is pushing the importance of pre-development funding on a bipartisan basis, that there's a lot of planning money, there's a lot of loans available, but to make a project turn from a one-pager into something that is fundable, whether by impact investors or grant makers, investment worthy, however you want to frame it, we are continuing to work on highlighting the importance of that. Vice President J.D. Vance, when he was a senator, had a rural pre-development bill that he did with Mark Kelly of Arizona. So we think there's a bipartisan coalition in the long run for getting bang for the buck out of pre-development investments at the federal level, at the state level. So, in international terms, that de-risking of projects is a very strong bipartisan case to keep making for that. How you handle things on an individual basis now. Invite another answer. I could move on to Emily.
Jump in quickly.
Okay.
So Amalgamated Bank was founded over 100 years ago by a union in New York, and we still have a real deep commitment to this social responsibility mission. We are the first U.S. bank to have a net zero strategy approved by the Science Based Targets Initiative, and will be net zero by 2045, including our financed emissions. So we are very much dedicated to climate finance. In fact, climate protection solutions comprise about 40% of our loan and investment portfolio today. So we aren't pivoting away from this. And in fact, just yesterday, we launched our 2025 Climate Impact Progress Report, so you can see that online. I think the pivot might come a little bit, what are the types of projects? Who's bringing them forward? What does it look like to blend and to partner to get some of these transactions done? But it's a growth driver for the bank, and we will continue to be there.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to pivot into our lightning round. So I'm going to go first, but you guys each get 30 seconds. Mine will be 3 words: pre-development powers pipeline. Who's up next? Amy?
Sure. This is going to ruffle maybe a few feathers. Meaning doesn't come through scaling. It comes from depth. So let's deepen our roots for a vibrant future.
Well done.
I'll kind of combine what would have been my answer to the other one? So I think, yeah, just emphasizing the importance of, pairing private and public capital to be able to replicate and, not to use the word that you just discounted, but scale projects.
Kaitlin,
And with the
you
communities,
should plug your workshop too, right?
yeah, the communities that we work with have faced gaps in access to public funding for a really long time. And at the same time, that is continuing to grow. And so we've been emergently as well launching a pre-development and technical assistance pool through recoverable grants to help fortify some of those efforts. And we'll be talking a little bit through a food systems lens in about an hour or so in a workshop that I invite you all to join. And my words in the meantime are shared infrastructure redistributes power.
Nice. Emily?
I love that. So there might be people in this room who've worked in community development for decades. It's an industry that's been around for quite some time. I think that climate is newer to the conversation and not always seen as something that is traditionally part of community development. But from my perspective, clean energy is community economic development. And I think there's an enormous amount of overlap between the two. And that's the only way we advance towards a more resilient future.
Thank you. So I want to first of all thank this amazing panel and Amy Christensen and her team for this incredible conference. So a round of applause.
Thank you.